Breaking news. Exclusive. We've just revealed what absolutely no one, not a single soul, expected. Deco, FC Barcelona's sporting director, has been working silently for weeks, and while the Madrid press endlessly repeated that Barca was on its knees, that it couldn't recruit, that it could only wait for rejects or second-tier loans, the reality is entirely different. We're talking about Alessandro Bastoni, the wall of Inter Milan, the most highly rated left-footed centre-back in Europe, a champion, a leader, and a complete footballer, now directly linked to Barca. Cool. Before we reveal everything, I have to tell you one thing clearly. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Don't forget, because here you'll find out everything that others hide, everything the Madrid press conceals, and what's really happening with our Barca. If you want to stay ahead of everyone and experience the real Barca, the one that beats to the rhythm of Blaugrana, this is the place. Do it now, because what's coming next is something you cannot afford to miss. The reality is that Deco has pulled off his masterstroke and has already made secret contacts for what would be one of the most impressive signings in recent years. This explosive news shatters the defeatist narrative that's been forced upon us from the outside. Because when no one expected it, when everyone was content to point out our financial difficulties, Deco surprises us by working from the trenches, silently, with precision, to strengthen the position that has been the club's weakest link over the last decade, the defense. If Bastoni arrives, this wouldn't just be another signing, it would be the construction of a team destined to become competitive for everything. For years, FC Barcelona has lived with an obvious problem: the defense. Since Puyol's retirement and Umtiti's physical decline, we Cules know we've never had a world-class left-footed centre-back again. Lenglet didn't live up to expectations, Vermaelen was always injured, Eric Garcia failed to establish himself. Even when we signed quality players like Kound or Christensen, there was always the feeling that something was missing, the key piece to complete the defensive wall. Araujo is a titan, but he can't do it all alone, nor is he a natural left-footed centre-back. Inigo Martinez arrived late and with issues, while youngsters like Cubarsí are still developing. This is where Bastoni comes in. Few understand just how vital an elite left-footed centre-back is. Such a defender doesn't just fix mistakes, they organize, balance the team, and enable clean football from the back. The historic Barca has always been built on a defense with a strong personality. Puyol commanded, Marquez played his way out, Pique managed the tempo. A Pique in his prime was unstoppable. That sense of security has been lost in recent years. With Bastoni, it would be regained. Alessandro Bastoni is today one of the best left-footed centre-backs in the world. Born in Castelmaggiore, Italy, he grew up in Inter's system. From a young age, he showed two things: defensive aggression and quality on the ball. At 25, he's played in the Champions League, won titles, and become an undisputed starter for the Italian national team. We're not talking about a bet on the future. We're talking about a footballer who is already in the elite present. Bastoni is strong in duels, knows how to anticipate, but what sets him apart is his ability to think. He doesn't clear the ball just to clear it. He chooses wisely, intercepts with discernment, and plays cleanly. With his left foot, he launches attacks from his own half. He distributes like a midfielder. This profile is gold for a Barca that has always relied on defenses with a strong foot to build its identity. With Bastoni, transitions would be clean and fast, minimizing the errors that have cost us so much in Europe in recent years. What makes this news a true bombshell is what comes next. We're not talking about empty rumors, we're talking about secret meetings. Deco has already made contacts to explore Bastoni's situation. He's spoken with the player's entourage, gauged his willingness, and begun to devise how to pull off an operation that initially seemed impossible. And here's the genius. Because in a market inflated with astronomical figures, Deco understands that you don't always win with a checkbook. Sometimes, you win with intelligence, strategy, timing, and, above all, persuasion. The Barca project remains attractive, and even though many in Spain try to say otherwise, players like Bastoni still see Barca as a higher step, a major challenge, and an opportunity to make history. The fact that Deco has orchestrated secret contacts is proof that, behind the media noise, Barca is moving. And moving fast. Now, let's imagine the scenario. Araujo at the center alongside Bastoni. Kound freed up to push forward. Cubarsí growing alongside top-tier references. A defensive block that doesn't just inspire respect, it inspires fear. Because rivals who, until now, thought Barca was easy to break down, that all it took was a few minutes of pressing to make us tremble, would now have to face a wall. Bastoni brings what's called European hierarchy. He's a player used to not backing down, whether against Bayern, Real Madrid, or physical rivals. This elevates Barca in the Champions League, where we've often been knocked out in the knockout stages, and also helps the team regain something vital, confidence in itself. A Barca that's solid at the back automatically becomes a brave Barca up front. Just remember, with Valdez, Puyol, and Marquez at the back, Messi, Eto'o, and Ronaldinho played without fear. With Valdez, Pique, and Mascherano, Iniesta and Xavi ruled. Defense is the foundation of all offensive freedom, and Bastoni is that foundation. It's obvious that from Madrid, from a certain press, the criticism will pour in. They'll say it's too expensive, that there's no money, that Bastoni will never come, that Inter won't let him go. There's nothing new under the sun. Every time Barca aims for something big, the critics appear first and justify themselves too late. When we signed Ronaldinho, they said he was finished. When we signed Neymar, they said he preferred Madrid. When we brought in Suarez, they said no one could add him to the trident. They always attack first, always deny first. And history is clear. Barca's moves end up being the most painful for Madridismo when they least expect it. Bastoni wouldn't just be another centre-back. Bastoni would be a symbol. He would represent that Barca, even in difficult times, still has the level to attract the best. He would represent that the project is alive. He would represent that the club does not surrender and that, even if enemies bet on our fall, we remain standing, ready to rise again and again. Barca needs messages like this one, because when a world-class player arrives, the locker room strengthens, the fans get excited, and the rivals hear the warning. Talking about Bastoni isn't just about limiting him to a classic defender who clears the ball. Talking about Bastoni is talking about pure tactics, modern defense. At Inter, Simone Inzaghi gave him a role that very few defenders in Europe can play, that of the perfect playmaker. When the opponent presses high, Bastoni doesn't panic, doesn't break the rhythm, doesn't just kick the ball out of bounds. He waits, thinks, lifts his head, and delivers a 40-meter pass behind the opposing fullbacks. Can you imagine that at Barca? With attackers like Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, and Ferran Torres taking advantage of those diagonals, Barca's game would change completely. The Cule has suffered for years when pressed high. The team finds itself without an exit plan because no defender has the composure and precision needed to break lines with a long pass. Bastoni does. In fact, in Serie A, he's an offensive weapon. He resembles a deep-lying midfielder because he opens up spaces with measured passes. He turns defense into attack in seconds. It's about building football from the back. It's about playing like the Barca of old, but with modern resources. On the other hand, we're talking about a natural left-footed centre-back. This is not a minor detail. Elite football demands specific profiles. It's not the same to place Araujo or Count on the left, forcing their weaker foot with less precision, as it is to have a complete left-footed player. The play becomes clean, natural, fluid, and here Barca would regain its balance. With Bastoni, the Cule tactical board opens up. Flick, or whoever the coach is, would have an option that is currently impossible to replicate. I want you to understand this from this angle. What does it mean for a La Masia talent to have a superstar like Bastoni by their side? Let's think about Pau Cubarsí, a kid of just 17 years old who shows the makings of a centre-back with historic potential. What's the best possible environment for him? The answer is clear: learning by sharing the defense with a world-class reference. Bastoni would be a real school on the pitch. Beyond training, every match at his side would mean masterclasses in positioning, discipline, knowing when to step out and when to wait. La Masia always grows faster when young players are surrounded by giants. Iniesta grew up alongside Xavi and Deco. Busquets learned from Touré and Marquez. Puyol solidified himself alongside Abelardo and Coco. And so on. Great talents flourish more quickly when they have world-class role models. Cubarsí would have in Bastoni that reference, a silent but dominant leader, someone from whom he can absorb every move, every decision. Moreover, the locker room itself would benefit, because when a young player sees a signing of this caliber arrive, they understand that the club is betting on competition, that the project isn't just about surviving, but about winning. This changes the mentality. It spreads hunger, restores Barca's maximum demand. We can't hide it. Every move Madrid makes in the market is amplified. The capital's press turns every signing into an epic narrative, and every time Barca faces financial difficulties, it becomes a target of mockery. Well, a signing like Bastoni's would be a real punch on Florentino Perez's table, because it wouldn't be a symbolic response, but a direct challenge. We're still here, we're competitive, we can also sign the best players in the world without depending on your headlines. Madrid has filled its mouth with Bellingham, Mbappe, with Galactico signings. But which team actually wins the Champions League without a solid defense? Barca, by placing Bastoni in its defense, would respond with balance, tactics, with a piece that doesn't make magazine covers but decides key matches. And we know it, Champions Leagues aren't won just with brilliant attackers, they're won with defenders who don't tremble on the big nights. The message would be clear. The rival would get a cold shower, because it would show that Barca isn't dead, that Barca always rises again, and that no matter the media pressure, when it comes to knocking on the door of a world-class player, Barca is always there. Now, many will wonder, how would this be paid for? Where would the money come from? This is where Deco's genius is demonstrated, because Barca doesn't intend to recruit recklessly, but creatively. And the club is working on several departures, freeing up spaces, adjusting the wage bill, all with one goal, preparing for the arrival of a decisive reinforcement. We're talking about a signing that would forever change Barca's defense, about Bastoni pulling on the Blaugrana jersey, a move that would leave everyone who wrote us off speechless. And be warned, I still have a lot more to tell you, but to continue with this cool exclusive, I need your support. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Now, because it's about supporting the real Barca, the one that doesn't give up and fights until the end. If you're a cool at heart, if you can't stand the media manipulation from the capital, this is your channel, this is your space. The plan isn't to spend for the sake of spending, as others have done in times of waste. The plan is to invest in a piece that multiplies the performance of the entire team. Bastoni is that. You invest in him, and you gain in security, confidence, youth development, and European competitiveness. Deco understands that such a signing is both a sporting and economic investment, because a strong Barca returns to the Champions League quarterfinals, returns to the semifinals, fills the stadium again, regains global impact. Moreover, we must be clear, not all signings are possible, but the differentiating factor in this operation is the player's willingness. If Bastoni takes the step and expresses real interest in coming, Inter can negotiate. And with Deco maneuvering in the shadows, nothing is ruled out. If we want to understand what signing Bastoni would mean for FC Barcelona, we can't settle for a simple analysis. We must place it within the historical tradition of the great centre-backs who have marked the club's history. Because when we focus on Barca's glorious cycles, we always find a common pattern. The great Cule titles have been built from the defensive backbone, and there, the figure of the leading centre-back has always shone as brightly as the offensive superstars. Let's start with an eternal name, Carles Puyol. The soul, the heart, the fighting spirit. Puyol wasn't just a defender, he was a symbol. Every time Barca needed courage, he was there, throwing himself to the ground headfirst, running like a madman until the 95th minute, ordering his teammates to raise their voices when necessary. The Camp Nou knew that as long as Puyol was standing, nothing was lost. He embodied sacrifice taken to the extreme. Now, let's move on to Rafael Marquez, the Kaiser of Michoacán. Marquez brought what we call tactical elegance. He never got disorganized, never ran too much. He anticipated with intelligence, distributed the ball like a midfielder, and delivered diagonal passes that split the field from end to end. He was the perfect partner for Puyol, balancing fury with a cool head. Marquez was a centre-back of his time, turning defense into an art. Next, we have Gerard Piqué, the centre-back who established himself as a glove fit during Guardiola's hegemony. Piqué didn't just defend, he had the vision of an attacker and a goalkeeper at the same time. He knew when to break lines, when to drive forward, when to appear in the opponent's box. He became one of the best in his position for nearly a decade. He was decisive in key moments, from the Rome final to the semi-finals against Inter or Manchester United. And of course, we can't forget the Dutchman Ronald Koeman, the Iron Man who also had a cannon in his right foot. Koeman wasn't just a defender. He was a builder, a playmaker, a scorer. He gave us the most iconic goal of Wembley '92, that shot that turned a dream into the first European Cup. Koeman proved that at Barca, the centre-back doesn't have to be secondary. they can be a total protagonist. We must also remember Javier Mascherano, who, though not a natural centre-back, embodied commitment. Mascherano played on the edge, multiplying himself in every duel. Literally, he gave everything in iconic matches like Barca PSG in 2017. He was the little boss who never held back, and his reading of the game complemented the rest of the Barca defense like few others. Why review all these names? Because if we look at Barca, it has always had a centre-back who defined the era. Always. There are no titles without a leader at the back. And that's what we're missing today. Puyol is no longer here. Marquez is gone. Pique has retired. Koeman belongs to the nostalgia of the 90s. Mascherano is no longer here. The void has remained gaping, and that's why the name Alessandro Bastoni is so monumental. Bastoni represents the perfect blend of all those historic qualities that made Barca great. From Puyol, he brings sacrifice and grit, that ability to never give up on a ball, to lead when suffering is required. From Marquez, he brings elegance with his feet, that ability to play his way out as if he were a midfielder disguised as a defender. From Pique, he inherits positional intelligence and composure on the hottest nights. From Koeman, the instinct to change games with a long pass or an aggressive run. And from Mascherano, the competitive character, the hunger to win without ever giving up. This is what makes this signing so special. It reconnects Barca with its own tradition. It wouldn't be an isolated name, it would be the natural continuation of a legacy that has been orphaned since our great historic centre-backs hung up their boots. Bastoni would fill that void and restore Barca's defense to the status it lost in recent years. Moreover, there's something that isn't said enough. Barca has almost never signed defenders for marketing. When we triumphed, it was because we knew how to detect defensive profiles that seemed understated but became giants. Bastoni fits this philosophy. He's not the commercial striker, not the Galactico on magazine covers. He's the one who supports the team, the one who wins you titles from the shadows. That's the essence of a winning Barca, attacking with art and defending with intelligence. In psychological and historical terms, we can put it this way: without a great centre-back, Barca doesn't write history. The club's caliber is also measured by the caliber of those who defend it when everything shakes. Bastoni would be that man, the spiritual heir to an unmatched legacy of giants who kept our banner standing for years. A signing isn't just adding a player to a starting 11. A signing is a message, a wave of emotions, a direct injection of morale for the fans and the locker room. And if we're talking about Barca, it's fans, that sea of Qs that fills the Olympic Stadium every weekend, and will soon return to our renovated Camp Nou. We're talking about a people who need hope, who scream for a reason to dream again. Bastoni would be that trigger, the spark that ignites a wave of energy spreading like wildfire through the entire Blaugrana fanbase. We must not underestimate something key. Psychology in football counts as much as tactics. A team can run, train hard, plan a match to perfection, but without confidence, without believing in the possibility of winning, nothing works. And that's where what it means for the people and the players themselves to see a footballer of Bastoni's caliber arrive comes into play. The Ql fans have been through tough years, years of painful blows. From Rome to Anfield, from Lisbon to Munich, every elimination has left scars and a bitter taste. Many Qls have had to endure the narrative that Barca can no longer compete, the smoke from rivals pointing fingers at us as a club in ruins. Of course, the fanbase resists, because Barcelonismo is used to fighting against the powerful, but resisting isn't enough. The Ql needs to dream again, and Bastoni's arrival is precisely the kind of news that breaks the cycle of pessimism. Imagine the scene, the official announcement, the jersey unfurled on the podium, Bastoni smiling in Blaugrana colors. Within minutes, Ql social media would explode, videos would multiply, celebrations in the Penis, Blaugrana pride hashtags. The fans, who currently feel in transition and doubt, would once again have a clear reason to shout to the world, "We're still here, and we're still signing world-class players." The psychological impact would be immediate, not only in terms of confidence but also respect. And it doesn't stop in the stands. The locker room would be infected too. The players, seeing a teammate of this caliber arrive, would understand that the club isn't here just to survive, but to win. Put yourself in Araujo's shoes, a guy who has given his body and soul, who has carried the defense on his shoulders, who has shouted for every contested ball, and who has often found himself alone supporting a fragile block. What it would mean for him if Bastoni arrived to share the battles. It would mean feeling reinforced, supported, relieved of carrying everything alone. Araujo would experience a brutal surge in confidence because he would no longer feel alone in the war. Or think about the young players like Cubarsí. Having a model of discipline like Bastoni in the locker room means growing on a highway without shortcuts, but with a guide. The respect his arrival would command in the locker room would be a constant tutorial for the younger players. Cubarsí, bald, the kids who dream of making their mark, would look beside them and clearly understand the demand. The internal message would be, if Deco signs Bastoni, it's because excellence is what matters, and you must be at that level. But the impact extends beyond Barca, because let's not fool ourselves, rivals feel it too. Real Madrid, the primary point of comparison, has thought for some time that Barca has dropped a notch in the hierarchy. And of course, seeing a class defender like Bastoni arrive would change that respect. Atletico, who are used to selling their matches against Barca as battles of equals, would find themselves facing an impregnable defense. Champions League teams, from PSG to Bayern, would have to recalculate their strategies, and this prior respect, this prior unease, is already a psychological victory before even touching a ball. Let's remember something Puyol explained in his time: the opponent steps onto the field differently when they know they'll have to face a wall at the back. Bastoni, like Marquez or Mascherano in their time, is that kind of wall. His name already carries weight, but his signing by Barca would make him even more imposing, as he would go from defending with Inter to defending with a club that is always under the microscope. Here, his hierarchy would be multiplied. And be careful, because there's another dimension: the media. We can't ignore that a large part of the football narrative is managed through headlines and debates. If Bastoni joins Barca, that day, the discourse changes. Until now, debate shows have repeated, Barca can't recruit. The project is over. Laporta can't offer anything attractive. Suddenly, with Bastoni presented, the discourse wavers. They would have to backtrack and acknowledge that Barca is still capable of attracting world stars. Psychologically, this even serves as a shield against constant harassment. While the rival press seeks to destabilize, such a signing restores self-esteem, restores pride, silences mouths without needing to speak, because a club defends itself not by talking, but by recruiting, by demonstrating that it still carries weight in the market. Now, let's talk about the stands themselves. The Cules who travel, sing, and support every weekend would receive an emotional reward. The fans, so often punished by unfulfilled promises and negative news, need relief, a positive stimulus. Bastoni would be that. He would be the signing that generates massive jersey sales, fills the stadium again, and motivates new members to commit, because the Cule, when excited, gives without measure. Additionally, there would be the factor of identification. Bastoni is a player who connects with the Cule essence, because it's not empty marketing, it's not a signing for the highlights, it's a signing of blood and sweat, of real football, and the Cule recognizes that, appreciates it more than anyone. He's not here to pose, he's here to work, and that makes him even more beloved before he even starts. In the collective memory, it would remain that, when it seemed impossible to recruit, Deco brought in true hierarchy. Imagine Bastoni's first big European night at Barca, with the stadium roaring during a Champions League knockout match. Every tackle, every clearance, every ball cleanly played out from the back would receive an ovation. The crowd would regain a defensive reference to idolize, like Puyol, Marquez, and Peak in their prime. This psychological phenomenon generates a virtuous circle. The player is motivated because he feels the support of the stadium. The fans vibrate because they see a leader at the back, and the whole team functions because they know they have a wall of confidence. This is how winning projects are built, with signings that bring not just tactics, but total emotional impact. That's why we say Bastoni can be much more than a centre-back for Barca. He can be the icon that suddenly restores the club's untouchable status. He can be the stimulus that destroys the apathy of recent times. He can be the spark that reignites the Cule fire in Europe and in La Liga. To understand what the possible arrival of Bastoni at FC Barcelona would mean, it's not enough to see it from a local angle, with our internal pulse against Real Madrid. We must place it on the great European chessboard, on the battlefield where it is decided who is who in football: the Champions League. Barca has been absent for years from that restricted circle of true contenders to lift the big-eared cup. In recent times, we've seen clubs like City, Bayern, Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, and even PSG mark their territory, while Barca lagged behind, unable to get past the knockout stages. And if we're serious, the big difference hasn't been so much in attack. Barca has always known how to score, but in defense. Let's be clear, we've conceded too many goals on pitches where we were once impregnable. Rome, Anfield, Lisbon, Munich. These scars aren't because Barca didn't know how to score, but because it didn't know how to defend like a champion. So, what has historically happened in Europe? Who lifts the titles? Clear answer, the teams that build from the back. Let's take immediate examples. Pep Guardiola won the Champions League with City when he signed Rúben Dias. That Portuguese changed the mentality of the entire team. From a City that collapsed in the quarterfinals to a City that was hard, consistent, almost impossible to break down. Madrid won its dynasty with Sergio Ramos as the defensive pillar. Yes, they had Cristiano and Benzema, but Ramos was the one who held the team together in every final, the one who appeared in every dramatic moment. Chelsea in 2021, against all odds, won the Champions League with a tactical block built around Thiago Silva. What was the key? Sacrifice, hierarchy, and solidity at the back. And Barca, when it was European champion. In 2006, a defense with Marquez and Puyol. In 2009 and 2011, Pique and Puyol in top form. In 2015, a version of Mascherano and Pique as an indestructible backbone. Every Barca Champions League had an elite defense. Every time that line weakened, we fell. That's where the name Bastoni comes in. Bastoni isn't just a center-back who contributes. He's a center-back who makes the difference at the continental level. If we add his presence to the current Barca, it completely changes the European narrative, because right now, rivals think, Barca can be easily broken down, just press for 15 minutes and they panic. With Bastoni, the message would be the opposite. You can have Haaland, Mbappe, or Kane up front, but today, you have to face an Italian wall. In Europe, pre-match respect counts for a lot, and Barca has lost that in recent seasons. No one fears us anymore. Well, signings like Bastoni's bring back precisely that. Respect, the feeling that this team can once again hold out for 80 minutes without conceding, the idea that it can win 1-0 and lull the opponent to sleep without suffering. It's no coincidence that Italy, as a national team, has survived tournaments thanks to its defensive DNA. Bastoni embodies that, but in a modern format. Italy won Euro 2021 against England with an unbreakable defense, and Bastoni was part of that process. Bringing that iron Italian character to Barca would mean regaining some of that toughness we've lost over time. Now, let's compare with direct rivals. Real Madrid has Rudiger, Alaba, Militao, but none of them is a natural left-footed defender with the ability to launch attacks like Bastoni. Bayern has Upamecano, De Ligt, and Kim Min-jae. All good, all physical, but none has the class and vision to organize from the back like Bastoni does. City has Kanji, Stones, and Diaz. Cracks, of course, but Stones is the one who acts as the playmaker in the build-up, and even then, he doesn't have the left-footed elegance that Bastoni would bring to Barca. PSG, packed with attacking stars, still hasn't consolidated a stable defensive duo that strikes fear into Europe. So, think about the impact. While others stockpile attackers, Barca can make the difference by strengthening the defensive wall. It can go against the grain and win precisely where everyone thinks we're most vulnerable. That's market intelligence, that's long-term vision. There's another angle. If Barca manages to sign Bastoni, it also elevates those who are already here. What does it mean for Araujo to have a reliable partner on the left? It means the Uruguayan won't always have to cover out of position, won't have to multiply himself in every action. He'd wear out less, be more focused, make fewer mistakes. It means Kound could play more freely, even push forward as a fullback without fear of unbalancing the defense. It means Christensen would have competition, and with that, his level would rise. And it means Kubarsi could grow without being exposed, protected until he's ready to take charge. In Europe, this has a name, real competitiveness. Because let's think about this. How many goals has Barca conceded in recent Champions League knockout rounds? Too many, and too easily. With Bastoni, in big away matches, you can think about keeping a 0-0, maintaining a clean sheet. And when you keep a clean sheet, Barca always has the attacking talent to score at any moment. That changes the scenario. Instead of being a team you just have to survive for 20 minutes of attack, we become a feared team again, because you know that if you don't capitalize on your two chances, you'll be punished. Europe also understands symbols well. When it's announced that Barca is signing a top European player in his prime, not in decline, but in his prime, the rest of the continent stirs. The Italian press would explode, the English press would pay attention, the German press would remember Guardiola's Barca, and the Spanish press, from Madrid, would do everything possible to downplay it. But it would already be done. Bastoni at Barca would immediately change the continental perception. And what would that mean in numbers? More real chances of progressing in the rounds, more defensive solidity, fewer goals conceded in European matches. And that, multiplied by each game, puts you back in the semi-finals, and from there, anything can happen. Here's the conclusion of this segment. Bastoni isn't a local signing, not just for La Liga, not to battle against Getafe or cut his attackers. Bastoni is a signing for the Champions League. It's a signing that restores Barca's place in the panel of European respect, in that small group of teams that rivals don't want to face in the draw. We'd go from being the desired opponent in the quarterfinals to becoming the feared one again. We're talking about a thunderbolt. Deco in the shadows, Bastoni in orbit, Barca returning to the market with intelligence. It's not a coincidence, it's not improvisation, it's high-level planning. And you, Kuhl, need to talk about this in the comments. Do you think Bastoni is the missing piece we need at the back? Would you trust Deco to pull off a signing of this magnitude? Does the idea of having an impregnable Barca defense again excite you? Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because this channel is your Kuhl space. Here, we talk about the real Barca, the Barca that fights, the Barca that surprises when no one expects it.